I was driving or recording this. Looking back, last semester was a huge mix of discovering both my potential and my limitations. By putting myself in new environments and meeting different people, I realized that I'm much better at certain things than I thought. Some tasks came naturally to me, while others made me see critical weaknesses I hadn't noticed before. For example, I always thought I wasn't good at leading people, maybe because it had been so long since I last took on a leadership role. I used to believe that my leadership skills only worked within a familiar company setting. But surprisingly, even when surrounded by highly capable people, I didn't feel intimidated. Instead, I thrived in that kind of environment. I became more confident, more engaged, and able to showcase my abilities without holding back. This realization was really eye-opening because I had assumed that I only stood out in comfortable small settings. I used to think I would fade into the background in a big organization. But I now know that even in a room full of talented people, I hold my own. That's a huge strength I didn't fully appreciate before. And maybe that's why I ended up being nominated as a representative. Of course, I also identify some weaknesses. Socializing itself is challenging for me, but more than that, I have a tendency to shut down completely, either fully engage or completely withdraw. I think this comes from my perfectionist tendencies and sensitivity. I pick up on people's emotions very easily, almost like tuning into different frequencies, and when there's too much going on, it overwhelms me. My natural reaction is to shut everything out and avoid dealing with it, which isn't always the best approach. The most meaningful part of my first semester was pushing through those feelings. Even when I wanted to shut down, I kept going. More importantly, I learned how to ask for help when I needed it. I'm really proud of myself for recognizing my strengths and weaknesses, and instead of just stopping there, figuring out how to work with them. I didn't let my strengths fizzle out or let my weaknesses hold me back. Another big thing for me was dance. You know how I do Korean traditional dance, right? I spent a lot of time reflecting on it. Early last year, I had pneumonia but still performed on stage. And later, I had a chance to see how professional dancers truly live their art. That experience made me realize that dance isn't just a skill or a hobby, it's a way of seeing life. It broadened my perspective on what dance and art really mean. If my perspective hadn't expanded, I wouldn't have even started questioning things the way I do now. Meeting my professor helped me reflect on what I really want. Am I someone who truly wants to dance? Recently, there's been a growing trend of people picking up Korean traditional dance as a hobby, partly influenced by shows like Stage Fighter. Before, most people who got into Korean dance were drawn to traditional rhythms, hanbok, the costume, or a deeper interest in Korean cultural elements. But now, many trained dancers from other backgrounds are entering the scene. They have incredible technique, but since they didn't learn the breathing techniques of Korean dance, they don't quite capture its essence. I've been a bit of an anomaly in this field. I started with traditional dance and stuck with it for years, which is rare these days. Since I've been doing it for so long, I naturally started tackling more complex pieces. But now, a lot of newcomers to the field are technically skilled dancers who are curious about Korean dance. Many of them come from contemporary backgrounds, which leads to interesting exchanges. Hanging out with these dancers made me realize how much people today are pushing boundaries, constantly seeking new choreography and training with different teachers. There's a huge curiosity about body movement and artistic expression. But my approach has been different. I've been learning the same piece for 3 years. At one point, I even told my dance teacher that I needed a break. I felt mentally exhausted and wasn't sure if I wanted to continue. I told my teacher that I needed time to figure things out. Instead of quitting completely, I decided to go back to the basics, focusing on foundational breathing and movement techniques. That's quite unusual in today's dance scene where trends move so fast. Even after saying I wouldn't perform, something changed. Without external pressure, I found myself wanting to dance again, specifically the traditional pieces I had learned early on. There was a kind of freedom in revisiting them. And then, somewhat unexpectedly, I ended up doing a winter performance. Preparing for it was a whole journey in itself, but I'll save that story for another time.